AVC, Plastic Eric here, Plastic Soundwave Call. I'm going to start this again because I left the fan on and I bet you it's going to make a noise.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to a Thursday Collection Connection where we're playing that game. It's just an excuse to talk about records. It's a game I play with my brother, Plastic Eric, over on the Plastic Soundwave Cult channel. Every Monday he shows an album, every Thursday I show an album, and the connective tissue that keeps the series going is that each album, in some way, factual, conceptual, or otherwise personal, has to relate to the album shown by the previous person in their video. So just go back and forth. And with that established, let's move ahead. In Eric's last video, he talked about Led Zeppelin, physical graffiti. I have to acknowledge that I don't have a great deal of knowledge about Led Zeppelin beyond sort of what's in the air. Like I could name, I think, all of the band members and some of their biggest and most significant songs. But even then, it's an experience I've tended to avoid more so than seek. And to give you an idea possibly of where I'm coming from, my favorite Led Zeppelin song is Fool in the Rain, which I think many would say is not a typical Led Zeppelin type song. So with that, I'm familiar with some of the tracks from Physical Graffiti, Kashmir, of course, but even then listening to it, I realize how much that I'm familiar with, the opening pounding, the ba-da-da, da-da-da, like that build, but not really the song in its entirety. It's interesting. I listened to it passively. I think the song 10 Years Gone, and it was definitely the song 10 Years Something. I think it was called 10 Years Gone, was the one as I was passively listening to it that made me sort of grab my phone and say, okay, well, what's this one called? That song sounded pretty good to me. I enjoyed that one. But kind of a ragtag mix of styles. Looking into it, a story most Led Zeppelin fans may be completely familiar with, but is new to me, is that when Physical Graffiti was recorded, they recorded sort of all the material they had, which yielded about 3 sides worth of music. And in order to beef it up to a double album, they pulled some tracks out of the vault, sort of, and I'm assuming re-recorded them. But yeah, contained some songs going back into their back catalog that had never made it onto record, including the song Houses of the Holy, which would have been the title track of their previous album. And that song existed during the sessions for Houses of the Holy, but deemed, I guess, not worthy of the album, but they revived it for Physical Graffiti. And it's not unheard of, but it is fairly unusual to have an album title and a song by that title, which is not then on that album. In a long ago episode of Collection Connection, I threw out a challenge to Eric regarding Robin Hitchcock's I album, which contains the song Queen Elvis, and tried to get him to guess what it had in common with Queen's News of the World, which was that News of the World contained Sheer Heart Attack. And so both Queen Elvis and Sheer Heart Attack were album titles in their previous catalog. But I didn't make it an actual connection. And so that one little challenge aside, I looked for other titles, and it included things I could have gone for are Almost Blue, or Elvis Costello's Imperial Bedroom, I think, which contains Almost Blue, and not the album. It's not on the album, which is titled Almost Blue. Julian Cope, whose World Shut Your Mouth was the name of an album, but the song World Shut Your Mouth appeared on St. Julian. But I've done at least one Elvis Costello and Julian Cope record throughout the history of this, so I wanted to see if there was anything new I could hit on. And I happened to find a list online of album songs or album titles that were also songs not appearing on that album. And the album or song that I came up with, or found that, can't say I came up with it, I just looked on a list, and it was an album that I had, is the song Especially for You, which is on the album Green Thoughts by the Smithereens from 1988. There we go. And Especially for You was the name of their debut album. It is different from Houses of the Holy in that the song was not in existence for Especially for You. I think songwriter and lead singer Pat Denizio, the late Pat Denizio, maybe the phrase that they titled that debut album kind of stuck with him, and then he wrote a song with that title that then appeared on the second album, Green Thoughts being their second album. So yeah, it wasn't a song written for Especially for You that was rejected from it, title track being rejected from its own album the way Houses of the Holy was, but a song created, I guess, from the phrase Especially for You sticking in his head. And it's one of my favorite Smithereens tunes. Pat Denizio's singing voice is right in my range, so Smithereens songs are a lot of fun for me to sing along with, and that one in particular, a little bit slower, has a bit of saxophone on it, being the 80s and all, but for the most part, they were a very straight ahead, two guitars, bass, drum, singer kind of band. And I was trying to figure out sort of their classification. They call them indie rock or alternative rock in the 80s. Also sort of listed as power pop, but they seem to be more on the rock side than the pop side. And it's sort of like AC/DC, very riff-driven songs, but instead of singing about, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, the lyrics are a lot more dour. And so it's sort of a blend. The Smithereens end up being kind of a blend of like REM and AC/DC. Very straight ahead rock and roll, but with very inward looking, introspective lyrics. I think maybe they are underappreciated because they didn't really set the world ablaze. They never really had a hit record. They had some middling success, and probably their biggest song came after this, with A Girl Like You on the 11 album. But this has some killer singles on it. Only a Memory and The Towering House We Used to Live In is a great song. I love it. Especially if You was not a single, I don't believe, but Drown in My Own Tears also. And Pat Denizio would take inspiration from British invasion bands. And so going backwards from AC/DC, I think it's probably fair to compare them to the Kinks in that similar, very just sort of the earliest Kinks before they got very conceptual. But in the You Really Got Me days, just a good riff and building a good song, good catchy song. So the songs are catchy for sure, but they feel like rock songs to me more than pop songs. They feel more like rock songs to me than even like Matthew Sweet, which to me is like the perfect blend of rock and pop, where you could describe it as either. They definitely feel more rock to me. But yeah, I don't have a ton of Smithereens. I have the singles collection, I have Green Thoughts, and I have their album 2011. But they were a band that after a couple albums after this, kind of went into retreat, and then they started to record much more thematic albums, like recording an album of Beatles songs, that type of thing. And a lot less original material. They continued to play up until Denizio's passing, and since then, the other three guys in the band, whose names I did not memorize, have continued to tour as the Smithereens with a bunch of different vocalists. Most notably to me, Marshall Crenshaw has played a number of shows with them as the lead singer, but they've never like anointed a new lead singer. They're just playing old, as far as I'm aware, old Smithereens tunes. And maybe they throw in a track or two if Marshall Crenshaw is singing. Maybe they throw in Someday, Someway. I don't know. But would certainly fit. But yeah, band out of New Jersey. I think even one of their hits collections, the one I have is called Blown to Smithereens, but I think they had one also called It Came from New Jersey. And so yeah, they're a band out of New Jersey, and they are the Smithereens. And their second album, Green Thoughts, is a winner. I really like it. And I think probably the biggest criticism I could make of it is that it's just sturdy songs. It's just solid. It's easy to listen to, pumps you up a little bit, but they are not so unique that they stand out necessarily as like your favorite band. They're just writing good songs, performing good songs. I think they're one of those bands like AC/DC that could be accused of all their songs sounding a little the same. And I would agree with that to a point, but I like the song that they keep rewriting, so I'm good with them. And yeah, so I will throw the Smithereens Green Thoughts over to Eric from 1988 on, what was it, on Enigma? Capitol. It's on Capitol. Oh, Capitol Enigma. I did remember that right. And yeah, he will make a connection to that, to the Smithereens on his video on Monday. So you can look forward to that over on the Plastic Soundwave Cult channel. And that's all I have. So thank you for watching, and bye-bye.